Welcome back. Well, now ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad reportedly receiving asylum in Russia after Islamist rebels took the capital of Syria on Saturday. The U.S., meanwhile, striking dozens of known ISIS camps and operatives across Syria yesterday to prevent the terrorist organization from taking advantage of the fall of Assad's regime. The strikes coming after President-elect Trump wrote on Truth Social that this is not the United States' fight and we should have nothing to do with it. Trump also said that the fall of Assad's regime should lead to an immediate ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, going on to say Russia is, quote, in a weakened state because of a bad economy. Iran also in a weakened state because of the success Israel has had. Joining me now is Missouri Congressman Mark Alford. He's a member of the House Armed Services, Small Business, and Agricultural Committees. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Give us your take on what took place in Syria over the weekend with rebels coming into Damascus and taking down the palace and sending Assad fleeing to Russia, no less.
Well, Maria, thanks for having us. Look, I think this is a further example of other weakness for Russia. They're so occupied now with this illegal, illicit war against Ukraine that needs to be settled fast. I think it will be before President Trump even takes the oath of office here on January 20th. We do not need to get involved in a ground war. I understand the strikes taking out the ISIS targets, but Israel needs to do the job of securing that buffer zone. You see that now, them going into Mount Hermon and other areas to try to create that buffer zone to keep these Islamic radicals from creating another area for which they could bomb or send missiles into Israel. We don't need that to happen.
Mm-hmm. I want to get your take on domestic policy as well, because we're now just 11 days away from the possible government shutdown, which could happen on December 20th. Speaker Mike Johnson pushing for a continuing resolution again, which would extend this deadline into early 2025. Congressional leaders agreed on a nearly $900 billion defense bill. The House expected to vote on that this week. It includes a 14.5% pay raise for junior enlisted troops, and it puts limits on transgender-related medical care, DEI-based recruitment, and teaching of critical race theory in military-run schools. This bill also features border security elements, like creating a Northern Border Mission Center. Congressman, are you expecting to vote on this bill?
I certainly am. We're still reading through it. It's about 1,800 pages, a little bit different than the House version sent over. We had a 19.5% pay increase for our junior enlisted. I was honored to be on the Quality of Life panel under the direction of our chairman for that, General Don Bacon, and we made some substantial gains in providing the relief that our service members need when it comes to pay, when it comes to housing and child care. We've got to get back to where we're able to recruit and retain our service men and women, and I think this is the right step in doing that. It also guts, as you said, a lot of the DEI programs that I personally worked on, trying to strip out the money. We should not be having diversity, equity, and inclusion taught in our military. It is driving young people away.
Well, I spoke with the former Speaker of the House yesterday, Kevin McCarthy, and he said that you all are pushing all of the funding into 2025, making President Trump's term, when he first gets into office, more difficult. Watch this.
Right now, it doesn't look like they're going to finish this year's funding, and they're going to push that into next year's funding. So what that means is you're putting more burden on President Trump. So that means government funding they never got done this year, and they got to get that done by next March. Well, if they're worried on that, that delays everything else. Not doing the border and the tax doesn't delay anything. It's that funding. The plan I had is you got the funding done, and you could actually do the debt ceiling now, too, to truly give President Trump a honeymoon.
What about that, Congressman?
I understand where Speaker McCarthy is coming from. I do not like continuing resolutions. Kevin McCarthy knows that. You know that by now about where we stand on that. However, this will give a little bit of relief for President Trump going into the next year. He will determine the budget for the next year. We'll be able to go with those numbers, and then I think create an even stronger National Defense Authorization Act. Maria, the last thing we need right now is a government shutdown right before the presidential inauguration on January 20th. This will allow us a little breathing room, yes, using these numbers, but giving some certainty to our military.
All right. Cheryl Casoni, jump in.
Well, Congressman, there's been so much talk about the work that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are doing with regards to Doge, but the problem is that when they make these recommendations, eventually it's going to be up to Congress. It's going to be up to you and your colleagues to pass these cuts. I know that you're having those conversations already. Where is the rubber going to meet the road?
Well, that's a very interesting question. You know, they were here the last week speaking to members of Congress, and really they weren't speaking as much as they were listening, getting some from all sides of our conference, some ideas to cut our budget. We all agree that this is an unsustainable area that we're in right now, almost $36 trillion in debt, and we are spending more on the interest on our debt than we're going to spend on the National Defense Authorization Act this year, over $1 trillion. And so we've got to right the ship, and it's going to mean cuts. It's going to mean cuts to the 24% of the discretionary spending that we have. And it's also going to mean looking long-term at the front end of some programs like Social Security and Medicare, not taking anyone off of what they paid into so far. But there is some waste, abuse, and fraud in Medicare that we can take those numbers back and add to our general coffers and our Treasury. And on the front end on Social Security, I think there's a way when people are living longer, they're retiring later, that on the front end we can move that retirement age back a little bit.
Let me get your take on this op-ed you have out in the Washington Examiner, Congressman. You call out President Biden's quote-unquote disastrous housing policies. You warn about Biden's pilot program that waives title insurance, writing it's an idea so bad that only a bureaucrat could have dreamed it up. Tell us more about that.
Well, look, I'm a former realtor. I know Cheryl's a realtor, and the American dream is still very much alive in the United States of America. And part of that is home ownership, building equity as you move along in life. You get married, you have kids, you're trading up to a newer house and investing that equity of your existing house in the next house that you buy. I'm there. I'm 61. We're benefiting from that now, having bought houses over a number of years. The average age now to buy their first home in America is 38 years. And this president wants to do away with title insurance. Have you heard of anything crazier, Maria? Title insurance is a way to secure your title, to make sure there are no clouds on the title. Maybe someone later comes back and claims an easement. Maybe they even say that they own the property. For this president to call it a junk fee is preposterous. And I think it shows the ignorance and the lack of leadership on his part.
All right. Well, we will keep watch on that. Certainly keep a spotlight on it. Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work, sir.
Thank you.
Mark Alford joining us.